For the Green Party, it was kind of a night of mixed emotions. Yes, they picked up a seat, giving them a total of 3 in Parliament and increased their share of the popular vote. But it's perhaps short of the breakthrough rather they were hoping for. So what's next for the party? Elizabeth May is the leader of the Green Party, and she joins us now from Victoria. Hi, Miss May. Thank you so much for making some time for us on a busy day after a long night. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vashi. Good to see you virtually.
Yes, we played a clip heading into the last commercial in which you described your party's outcome as not the worst thing in the world. There was a lot of talk ahead of this campaign about a potential breakthrough for your party. What do you think, if you were to pinpoint it now, and I realize that there isn't a huge amount of time for reflection in just 24 hours, but what do you think wasn't, what would you have done differently? What might have gone wrong?
Well, first of all, I don't know why we wouldn't call this a breakthrough. We broke through getting more than 1 million votes from Canadians. That's a breakthrough. At the end of the 2015 election, I went back to Parliament by myself, which I have to say was very hard. The morning after in 2019 is not nearly what it was in 2015. I go back to Parliament with Paul Manley, who held on to a seat that he'd won in a by-election against heavy tides of outspending in advertising from the NDP, and Paul Manley held that seat. I held my seat also against heavy tides of spending in negative ads from the NDP, and winning not just another seat, but a seat in a part of the country where we haven't had a federal seat in Parliament before. In fact, Jenica Atwin is the first woman member of Parliament ever from Fredericton, and at 32 is one of the younger members. And so I'm thrilled to lead a caucus that has another breakthrough. We're the first federal party in Parliament with more women than men as we resume Parliament. My concerns are, how do we make this minority Parliament work, and how do we make Canada work after the divisions of this last very difficult campaign?
And I do want to ask you about that in a moment. But first, I'll put to you a similar question that I put to Ed Fast a few segments ago about the way in which you're characterizing the outcome for your party. Is it a bit of revisionist history? And I ask because you did, when I interviewed you during the campaign, you were not saying, I hope we win 3 seats and that will qualify as a success for us. You wanted to hold the balance of power. You don't in this situation. You have an increased role. I'm not negating that. I'm not downplaying that. And your share of the popular vote did increase. You're going to Ottawa with 3 seats. But is this exactly how you qualified success going into this campaign?
Well, Vashi, as I said, I think in every interview during the election campaign, I wouldn't put a number on it. My colleagues in the Australian Greens once had balance of power with 1 seat. It's not about the number of seats, it's the cards you are dealt. These are difficult cards because the Liberals clearly have other partners with whom they can dance to hold on to the confidence of the House. If they form some kind of an agreement, and I imagine they won't form a firm agreement for all time with any one of the parties. It would be impossible to imagine it with the Bloc Québécois or with the NDP. It will be more difficult. So what I see happening is probably 1 vote at a time, with the Liberals basically being able to play one party off against another, with none of the bigger parties being prepared to say, we'll go back to the polls. So I've seen minority parliaments play out like this before. I'm saddened because I'm trying to figure out, how do we make this productive? How do we make progress on climate in a minority parliament? How do we make progress on pharmacare? Basically, how do we work together after a very divisive election campaign? I had a very good conversation, by the way, today with the Prime Minister.
I was going to ask. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very open to trying to make things work, but we won't compromise on the science. And the science around the climate crisis is clear. So my biggest disappointment, and I'm not going to say I'm not disappointed, but our party's never done better. But the reality is the election results and the minority parliament are not solid on climate progress. We don't have any other party at the federal level committed to bringing in the kind of actions that are required. And we need to make sure that as we bring forward those actions, we get Alberta and Saskatchewan on side. So I'm very much thinking, as I tend to as a national party leader, how do we make all of this work, and how do we work together?
Did the Prime Minister offer you any assurances in that respect? For example, I remember speaking to you about the importance, you said, of the more aggressive climate targets. Did you talk about that? Did he provide you with any reassurance?
Well, no, I mean, we did talk about it. He knows that this isn't a political issue. This is based on the science of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I put it to him again that during the election campaign, he chose the right target for 2050, which is carbon neutrality by 2050. You simply can't get to carbon neutrality by 2050 if the government continues to use the target Stephen Harper left behind as though that is an adequate launching pad to get to where you need to be. In other words,
I understand all that, and we've talked about it. But what did Mr. Trudeau say?
Well, it was a conversation without conclusions, but it's a conversation that will continue. That much is clear. We'll continue to talk about what can be done, how we need to actually listen to the science. It's not a political issue. It's whether our kids have a livable world, and this isn't political rhetoric. This is a reality. That's why it's a very hard day, knowing that yes, we did the best campaign we could do in choppy waters for sure. But it's not about politics. It has to be about how we work together to ensure that we avoid the worst of climate emergency.
You sound very committed to, whatever comes, at least being in Parliament and being a part of that process. Does that mean that you are here to stay as leader of the Green Party?
Well, I'm certainly not. I don't think any party leader would say they were here to stay up. The other party leaders have more to worry about this morning today than I did. Mr. Singh's party went from 3rd place to 4th place. We are where we were, but now 3 times larger. So I'm not, certainly Mr. Trudeau lost seats. Mr. Scheer did not deliver on the Conservative hopes, with all kinds of things breaking in their favor. They couldn't capitalize on it enough to get more seats than the Liberals, even in a minority parliament. So the big winner, I suppose, is in all of this was the Bloc Québécois, but they only got a fraction, hardly that many more votes than the Greens, but they got 32 seats while we have 3. So again, it underscores the perversity of our first past the post voting system. There is a lot of lessons to be learned from this campaign, but none of them suggest to me that I should cease to be a leader in the immediate short term. I need to talk to Paul Manley and Jenica Atwin. Those conversations have started. We're a new caucus. Jenica and Paul haven't even met each other yet. Jenica's amazing, and I'm really excited to have a committed young woman join a caucus where we're 2/3 female going into a parliament. But there's a lot to figure out about how this minority parliament can work, and how do we, as federal party leaders who understand the climate crisis, get Alberta and Saskatchewan to also agree that it doesn't make sense to build a pipeline with federal dollars that doesn't have an economic case behind it, when we could use those federal dollars and build infrastructure in Alberta that's green instead.
I'm unfortunately out of time, but I'm sure we could have a whole conversation about just that subject, and I'm sure we will in the weeks to come. Thank you, Ms. May. Really appreciate your time today. That's Green Party leader Elizabeth May. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.